What's happening, guys? Welcome into another boxing breakdown and prediction show for this weekend's massive undisputed super middleweight clash between pound for pound star Saul Canelo Alvarez as he takes on ABF super middleweight champion Caleb Sweethands Plant for all the marbles undisputed. So let's get into it. No surprise ahead of this one, obviously. Canelo enters the ring as the prohibitive minus 1,200 favourite in this one, with Plant coming back at a plus 700. Now, for those who don't know, look, Caleb Plant, he's an undefeated champion. He's 21-0. He's got 12 knockouts to his name as well. But people have obviously been picking apart his resume in the lead up to this fight, especially his recent opposition. Arguably the best win of his career so far was back in 2019 when he outpointed former champion Jose Uzcategui. Caleb Truex, another decent win on his resume too. But, none of these guys obviously prepare you for Canelo Alvarez, who will be facing this weekend. Saying that, though, Caleb Plant has been doing some things right, in my opinion. He ruffled Canelo's feathers at the press conference last month with Slapgate, or whatever it was called. Plant arguably came off the worst in that one. He had half of his sunglasses embedded in his face. But we've hardly ever seen Canelo that riled up before a fight previously. And, if Billy Joe Saunders couldn't get under Canelo's skin, I'm kind of surprised Caleb Plant has managed to do so. The second thing I believe Caleb Plant has been successful in the lead up to this fight has been bringing in Andre Ward to camp for some advice. This dude, Ward, is obviously one of the best brains on the boxing, first ballot Hall of Famer, obviously, too. So, if you're going to try and bring in someone into camp to try and gain a competitive advantage over Canelo, Andre Ward would be the guy to go to. Now, as I said previously, on another video when I broke down Canelo versus Saunders a few months ago, that while Canelo is the best pure boxer on the planet for me, at least from the waist up, he doesn't have the greatest foot movement, which, is a problem when you're facing more fleet-footed fighters like a Caleb Plant. Now, again, in my opinion, Canelo has mitigated that somewhat by that step-in long-range right-hand lunge of his. Has enough ring coverage to generally freeze opponents in place with that punch. That's something he's developed over time and something that, the Reynoso gym has continued to work on over the last few years as a kind of method of handling slick movers and cutting off the ring against them. Revisiting the Sergey Kovalev fight a couple of years ago, I thought Buddy McGirt did a tremendous job in that fight of preparing Kovalev, for Canelo's style. Kovalev up to that point in his career, at least up to the second Elite Alvarez fight, had been known as the crusher. He used to come in. He was generally a guy looking to hunt you down, take you out. And I'm sure that's the version of Kovalev Canelo was relying to come out when he made that jump up to 175. That's who he was preparing for that WBO title. However, that's not who showed up on that fight. Kovalev came out looking to move, looking to plant that jab in Canelo's face. And he frustrated Canelo in that fight. With his movement, he was very efficient at pivoting off the ropes in that fight. Refused to get trapped by Canelo. And, that fight was razor close on the scorecards, by the time of the stoppage. Kovalev, who was 36 at the time, eventually did wear down. Canelo managed to catch up to him as a result and close the show in the 11th round. But, the blueprints are kind of there on how to frustrate Canelo in fights. And I'm sure that's something Andre Ward has been highlighting to Caleb Plant in camp. As I said, Canelo has been working on that aspect of his game, though. He absolutely destroyed Callum Smith's upper arms in his title fight against him last year, using that long right-hand lunge punch to effectively kind of freeze Smith into place, take out Smith's own weapons in that fight as a result. But again, Callum Smith, despite being a come-forward hunter himself, just like Kovalev, managed to survive in that fight. And that's what I see here as well. Billy Joe Saunders, very talented fighter, no doubt, arguably, possibly more so than even Plant is. And that might have actually been Saunders' downfall against Canelo. I had Canelo winning 4 of the first 6 rounds in that fight. I thought Canelo's overall aggression and control were edging him the majority of the rounds in that fight. I believe I had it 78-74 at the time of the stoppage as well. But, listening to the DAZN broadcast, guys like Chris Mannix on the telecast had it much closer than I did. Believe Mannix may even have had Saunders up at one point. So, to me, revisiting that fight again, it's clear, Canelo, in my opinion, couldn't have got the stoppage without Saunders' consent. Saunders was floating around the outside for most of the first 4 rounds in that fight. He held a low guard as well. But, the genius of Canelo for me, and something which basically only a handful of fighters in the entire sport are capable of, was in the way he adapted to that situation. Now, I haven't got any confirmation on this, obviously, but, watching the fight live and then re-watching it again recently, it was clear to me that Billy Joe Saunders' two best rounds in that fight were rounds 5 and 6 after staying on the outside for the first 4 rounds. He started coming inside more and more, kind of breaking that pocket. He was jumping in with short hooks and uppercuts on Canelo, then ducking low, and pivoting out of range again. And I couldn't help think while watching the fight that this was almost a ploy, kind of set up by Canelo in that fight to bring Saunders in. Saunders was finding more and more success in that fight going into the middle rounds. He had a face on him like he just reinvented the wheel, basically, thinking he'd figured out Canelo. And then suddenly in round 8, we all saw what happened, crunch, absolute showstopper uppercut by Canelo to close the show. Just the way he timed it to absolute perfection as well. And, the punch ended up being so devastating. Canelo even backed off Saunders to close out the round. He knew he was done. So, as I say, maybe that's just the way it worked out in that fight. But in my opinion, it definitely looked to me like Canelo set Billy Joe up to get caught flush in that one, jumping in the inside. Let him find a bit of success in the middle rounds to draw him in. And finish the show. But that's something he probably won't get the opportunity to do here again against Plant. Look, there's no way Plant can win this fight going inside on Canelo. Can't be done. He has to stay on the outside. He has to box here. He has to use range, keep that jab planted in Canelo's face all night long, no pun intended, and try and walk Canelo onto a big left hook whenever he gets the opportunity. Now, while Kovalev provided the blueprint for that strategy, the difference here is that Plant is much sharper. He's younger. He's fresher than Kovalev was for that fight. And, he's a natural mover, whereas, Kovalev wasn't. I'm sure a lot of Ward's advice in camp revolved around the one big advantage Plant has in this fight, which is his superior foot movement. And by the same token, I don't see Canelo's tactic of effectively playing possum and luring Plant in, into the inside, into the pocket, like he did against Billy Joe Saunders, working for a second consecutive fight. I do see this fight going the distance on Saturday. I think that's where the value is, especially at plus 150 where it is now. Also, for the more adventurous out there, Plant by decision is going off at plus 1100. I got plus 1400 last month. I thought it was just a little too big, and that's since been clipped in, obviously. But, plus 1100 is still a decent price on that. Plant's only real method of victory in this fight is on points. In no way, shape, or form do I see Plant being able to stop Canelo, despite his left hook. So, for me, the main bet in this fight is, will the fight go the distance? Yes, at plus 150. Really like that price, as I see Canelo having some real issues closing the distance on Plant on this one. And as a side bet, look, if you're going to give me plus 1100 on an undefeated champion who moves as well as Plant does to potentially win a points decision, I have to take a piece of that. Yes, I do think Canelo wins, but look, it's an odds game. So a plus 1100, even more so a plus 1400, have to take a piece of that. So yeah, will the fight go the distance? Yes, plus 150, along with a little sprinkle on the Plant by decision proper plus 1100. That's the way I'm going to play this one. So that'll wrap things up for this week. As always, leave us your thoughts in the comment section below. You can also catch me over on Twitter at the SportsWolf83 and at my handicapper page, Kevin Dolan, over at WagerTalk. As always, thanks for listening. Until next time, Slán